Good morning and welcome back to At Rainbows Are Magnetic. And I'm Mick Cox, the discoverer of Rainbows Are Magnetic Facts. Check out the video. It's been a huge couple of days, a huge week. And I would have done this video late last night, but I'll tell you why I didn't. And the reason I would have done it last night is because there's been so much seismic activity in our Earth due to some heavy lines that are moving around we're orbiting through at the moment and causing volcanoes, etc. It's all written about in the book, The Holy Grail of Science. First of all, if you want to read The Holy Grail of Science, please check out the video Rainbows Are Magnetic first, and you'll really understand the foundation of the Holy Grail of Science book. I've never written a book, and except for that one. I never read a book, but I did write a book. The whole thing is a miracle, really. So anyway, our subject today is duty cycles. I want to tell you about duty cycles so that you understand what a duty cycle is, and the best way for me to have you align or tune in, educate your mind, or for you to gain some wisdom in regards to duty cycles is to first of all describe the electrical duty cycle of welders. So welders have a duty cycle. The duty cycle of a copper wound transformer type welder has a greater duty cycle or a longer duty cycle than an aluminium wound welder, transformer type welder. A transformer type welder, I'm talking about the old school, one winding was the primary winding, and the secondary winding, which limited the current by winding an iron core in and out as well, was how transformer type welders functioned. But again, a copper wound transformer type welder, a copper wound welder has a longer duty cycle, meaning that you can use it for longer, you can weld for longer amounts of time before you either have to give it a rest or it cuts out. Majority of welders, transformer type welders, have a duty cycle with a cutout switch. The old school, the olden day copper wound transformer welders didn't have a cutout switch, be it thermal, of course. And so that was because copper wound transformers, welders, performed so much better. They could handle the current so much better. Now also to mention that copper itself, being a metal, is nowadays, was once upon a time 100% pure copper, but nowadays it's becoming an alloy, and because of the percentage of copper in it, they can still refer to it as copper. It might be something like the same regulations or guidelines to do with owning companies. When you own 51% of a company, you have controlling interest in a company, and maybe the legal terms of the metal, so identifying the metal as copper, is something along those lines. So it has to have the majority percentage of copper in it to be able to call it copper. But nowadays copper is an alloy. Alloy meaning an amalgamation of metals, in the term of metals, an alloy. Stainless steel is an alloy. You can't dig stainless steel out of the ground. And A chap told me years and years ago, decades and decades ago, when I was a young man, that stainless steel couldn't be recycled, but it can. And there's lots and lots of grades of stainless steel nowadays. We're not into that subject today, but nowadays the greatest stainless steel that I can ever remember that they made was marine grade in lay terms, but in technical terms it was called 316 stainless steel. Fridges nowadays, a majority of fridges nowadays are made out of 304, which will, and 316 won't hold a magnet. So medical devices in your body are 316 marine grade stainless steel and won't hold a magnet, won't be detected under a magnet. But 304, what the majority of fridges are made out of, will hold a fridge magnet, and they do. And 316 marine grade won't rust, but 304 will rust, does rust. And obviously there are different grades of 304, and there's a whole multitude of different grades of stainless steel nowadays, whereas when I was a kid, there was only marine grade 316 stainless steel. And I think that was it. And then all these other grades came out, or all of these other grades blossomed. So let's get back to transformers and welders, especially welders. And what I'm going to tell you is, again, is that a original pure copper wire wound welder in a transformer type with the iron core that you wound in and out of the center of the winding, both windings, I think I remember both windings, which intensifies the magnetic field by winding an iron core in. Iron does not retain magnetism, but iron can become magnetic when you wind a wire around it and apply an electric charge. Electromagnetic energy. It's electrical energy and it's magnetic energy. So the iron core, as it goes in, helps to intensify the magnetic field that is already there by putting an iron core in it. So a heck of a lot of transformers, especially in our streets and etc., have iron cores in them and around them so as to intensify the magnetic flux density. God, it's all coming back to me. So I really am glad I didn't make this video late last night. I was a bit spent. So duty cycle on on welders and on transformers, they're one and the same type of thing. When a welder has, say, let's say a 70% duty cycle. The duty cycles are always rated in percentages. I should have said that right from the beginning. And so what happens is that 70% duty cycle, you can run the welder for 70%, let's say, of an hour, and then it may switch off, depending upon the current that you're running, of course. So when a welder is flat out, that's when you expect the duty cycle to cut in. So out of 10 minutes of welding, you might have to stop after 10 minutes and give it 1/3 of that 10-minute time. You might have to give it 1/3 of that 10 minutes break time, downtime. So that would be around about 13 minutes of 10 minutes of welding, 13 minutes in total, including the rest time for the welder. And the same thing goes for transformers in our streets. Once upon a time, when I worked in the electrical supply industry. All transformers were pure copper wound transformers, and very, very economical, and of course, especially when the load was balanced properly, meaning the number of houses per se, factories, etc. Air conditioners, especially as our globe gets warmer and warmer. There's no denying it. Just quickly on the globe, let me tell you, it is a scary thing, global warming, but we have to get in tune with it. I spoke to some people from Nepal once, and I asked them if they knew that the snows were receding in Nepal. This was about 22, 24 years ago that I asked them if the snows in the mountains were receding at all. And they, the lad said to me, he was about 17, said to me that his grandfather said the snows had receded 500 metres about 22, 24 years ago. Well, that's a long time ago. And the lad said that the snows had receded 500 metres permanently. Sidetracked again. That's the Aspergus. It's like opening a door, and I have to mention what's in that door. I find it extremely hard to not say. But anyway, so welders and transformers, I think you can understand now how it's possible. And also another thing that comes into play is the quality of the iron core. It may be nowadays an alloy as well. Sometimes maybe they're starting to use aluminium, but electronic welders nowadays have heat sinks. And the heat sinks on the electronics, diodes especially, are aluminium, which has the greatest heat dissipation properties. There are probably other metals that do have a better heat dissipation, but for costs, keeping costs down. And the same goes for aluminium wound welders that are in our streets nowadays. So I don't know why, but in my days working for the authority, there was big strikes. I got out before the strikes, and when the strikes had finished and different people stepped in, workers stepped in, they removed a lot of the copper wound transformers, pure copper wound transformers, and put aluminium transformers in. No idea why they did that, but it started to produce power surges, power dropouts, I should say. Not power surges, sorry, wrong word there. Power surges is something from a storm, etc. Power dropouts due to a lower percentage of duty cycle in those aluminium welders. I was reminded of that when I saw the movie Transformers with my son years and years ago when it first came out. So anyway, now that you're fairly clear with welders and transformers, let me talk about on the electrical side of duty cycles. Before I talk about batteries having a duty cycle, depending upon the quality, let's say for a lithium battery that has a certain amount of current that you can draw from it, and a lithium battery can consist of a number of lithium batteries together that make up one mechanically or one enclosed lithium battery, or you can put a number of lithium batteries together and call it a cell. In lay terms, a cell, but it's a number of lithium enclosures, a number of lithium battery packages can be joined together to make up one big battery, which is what happens in the EV cars. You'll see them advertised at, say, not particularly EV vehicle batteries, but you do see them advertised, lithium batteries advertised at, say, 3.2 volts and 100 amp hours. I've seen that a lot lately. I don't know the size of them. Some people showed a fridge the other day for sale that they bought on Temu, and it turned up it was this big, and nothing illegal about that at all. But the sizes of fridges, I thought were getting bigger. Anyway, so I'll jump back and we'll talk about batteries again, because there'll be some hesitation in regards to a duty cycle of a battery in some people, with some people who aren't, say, electricians or professional. But there's an awful lot of fantastic people working with lithium batteries and stuff nowadays, doing a fantastic job, great education and stuff, but just not from a actual professional electrical background. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, but anyway, so let's jump on to, and I'll come back to batteries, as I said. Let's jump on to, because I've got a lot more other things to tell you about batteries. So let's jump on to mechanical duty cycle. We can look at a fridge thermostat in that when a fridge reaches a particular temperature, of course, set by the thermostat, it will switch the compressor off. And a part of the duty cycle of a fridge is to include what they have nowadays as the defrost cycle. That's all a part nowadays of the duty cycle of a fridge. But the mechanical duty cycle of a fridge is primarily gauged by the thermostat, which will also be gauged by the surrounding temperatures, atmospheres, conditions, and exposures, etc. So you can increase the duty cycle. Let me give you one example that we see a lot nowadays in four-wheel drives. They keep their freezers in the back of the wagons per se, and they silver screen out the windows so as to increase the duty cycle of a fridge. Might be a little bit hard to grasp, but the duty cycle, let's say the duty cycle of a fridge is greatly dependent upon the efficiency. So welders, transformers, I described that a welder or a transformer has nowadays has a percentage duty cycle, and motors could have a duty cycle. So fridges, and that's all relative to efficiency. So fridges have a duty cycle due to the thermostat, but you can increase that duty cycle, the efficiency of the fridge. You can lengthen, shorten. Okay, so when the temperature of a fridge comes down to the thermostat setting, because of course fridges are meant to keep things cold. If it's a cold environment around it, you don't need a fridge. So fridges are meant to bring the temperature down of your goods, your product, and chemicals and medical as well, remember, to the point of freezing and lower than freezing, negative temperatures that are well and truly below freezing. So to shorten the amount of time it takes for the compressor to cut out and it's at its coldest, then you can improve the efficiency. One way of doing it is to relocate or set apart from the fridge of the condenser unit, which condenses the vapor back into a liquid. If you can get that vapor cooled quicker, if you can get that vapor cooled into a liquid at a lower temperature, if you can get that liquid at a lower temperature before it goes to the expansion valve, then and an expansion valve can consist of just a small capillary tube that goes into a larger tube, which is majority of expansion valves in fridges. Fridges really are at this moment domestic fridges really are at this moment quite efficient for their design, but in commercial fridges they have what they call a TX valve, the expansion valve, and TX meaning that where the X is, it comes in as a liquid, expands into a vapor. The same thing happens in our weather, and it causes a low pressure, and a low pressure, a sudden drop in pressure causes a drop in temperature. That's refrigeration for you. And so maybe they discovered that in nature first before they invented fridges and etc. So fridges were originally run on an ammonia gas. The ones that had an actual LP gas or natural gas flame that heated the ammonia gas, which made it expand, and then they put it through into a liquid at a high pressure. When things are heated up, they increase in size, and if the size or the area that it's in can't increase, then it increases in pressure, and then they put it through a condenser which condensed the ammonia gas into a liquid, and through the expansion valve. They were the early fridges. So let me tell you that I hope you can understand that fridges now can understand that fridges have a duty cycle. And let me tell you that to maybe help understand a duty cycle a bit better, that most definitely a pendulum has a duty cycle from let's pick the middle point, because that's where we can have an indicator. We can't put an indicator at one end or the other end of a pendulum because we're always unsure as to where it will stop. So the indicator on a pendulum is in the center. Sorry for being so Captain Obvious there. But so the duty cycle of a pendulum is measured from one stroke to the other stroke, from one and back again, and you can and that's how a rhythm, one of those sorry, I'm not musically minded, but one of those devices that creates a rhythm, and of course the shorter the swing, the shorter the duty cycle, or the faster the rhythm of that musical instrument that has to do with the timing of a melody. So pendulums have a duty cycle, and we could in lay terms say that an ocean, its tides have a duty cycle in a similar sort of way to a pendulum. Oceans, of course, tides are generated, caused by our moon, primarily by our moon. And let me say that if this were our Earth, that the moon travels around our Earth in an elliptical shape or egg shape, with the Earth at one end of the elliptical shape, much like an egg, in that very same sort of style or shape of an egg, if you put it on one end. And yes, there's a pointy end at every egg, and there is a pointy end at the at the orbit of our moon around our Earth, because the gravitational pull is a lot stronger at our Earth. And I'm no expert on science and how the moon revolves around our Earth, but it's the moon goes closer at one end due to the polarities, of course, or something like that. Our Earth is on a 23-degree axis, a tilt, and our moon is on a tilt as well. So fridges, thermostats have a duty cycle, pendulums have a duty cycle, our oceans have a duty cycle per se, and most certainly welders and transformers have a duty cycle. Now, batteries. This is what I really want to talk to you about today, is I want to talk to you about batteries and the duty cycle of batteries, and the duty cycle of batteries in what they can deliver is a little bit mechanical. Maybe batteries go into both categories, because what happens is, with let's say a poorer quality lithium, or let's talk about nickel metal halide batteries, but this occurs a great deal more in lithium batteries, and I think because the demand of lithium is so great that there are some poorer quality lithium batteries. And so if we could look at a lithium battery a little bit like a sponge that's damp with water. It's not a great analogy, but it'll help. So if we were sucking out water from the top of the sponge, or the side of the sponge, if the sponge is on its side, you would expect that some of the water would come out fairly quickly, and it would take some time for the water at the back of the sponge or at the other end of the sponge to move across to where the water is being removed from the exit of the water, the exit place area, the exit area of the sponge, of the water. And it's very, very similar to that. It's not a bad analogy. And so with poorer quality lithium, just like poorer quality copper, it takes some time for the stored energy in the lithium to come out, to move through all of the other lithium that might be at the opposite end of the terminals of the lithium battery, for it to reach the terminals. But higher quality lithium batteries really don't have that problem, just like pure copper wound transformers didn't have that problem, and especially welders didn't have that problem. No duty cycle. So I'm pretty sure that all lithium batteries do have a duty cycle, but when it comes to design and construct of a lithium battery or nickel metal halide battery circuit, you obviously don't put a greater load than your lithium quality of materials can handle. That's a good way of putting it, because we really don't need high quality lithium in every situation. Let's say a torch, especially with an LED lamp, you really don't need high power surges like a starter motor or a high current motor would need, or welding with lithium batteries. I don't know what it's like to weld with lithium batteries, but I used to weld with lead acid batteries when I was really desperate. In some cases, when I didn't own a welder, I welded a wrought iron bed together with and expanded it, because wrought iron beds were only a double bed once upon a time, and I expanded that wrought iron bed into a queen size bed by using my dual battery setup that was in my work van. And I had a dual battery setup. They were both identical batteries. You really must use identical batteries if you're welding with, and I mean same brand batteries, same amp hour batteries especially, but same quality of battery. Otherwise you could put some, you could create a dangerous situation with the battery, with the plates warping, etc. And you really want to use high current, very high current batteries. Otherwise it's going to look like a dead short instead of a load on the batteries. So yeah, I welded that I welded that wrought iron bed, transformed it into a queen bed. I think I had 6 inches or something of angle iron in there, and transformed it into a, changed it, converted it into a queen bed. So lithium batteries, they can have a duty cycle, and you'll see that duty cycles of lithium batteries now have a rating. You can, as one example, a 20 amp hour or 30 amp hour, 40 amp hour lithium battery I've seen advertised that will deliver, say, 20 amps for X amount of time, and before there is an inbuilt cutout, and it may be thermal, I don't know, it's definitely electronic, the cutout that's inside a lithium battery, style battery. And of course the chargers which charge all batteries have a current limiting device so that not too much load on the transformers is created to damage the transformer. So those current limiters are there to safe keep the battery charger, and the current limiters are there on lithium batteries to safe keep the lithium battery. Your battery charger may just blow up, be it a wound transformer type charger, very rare to find nowadays, or a selenium diode type rectifier, selenium rectifier type diode type battery charger, or a electronic charger nowadays. They all have current limiters, especially with electronics. So once upon a time you could buy a step down or a current limited transformer which was 1-to-1, and it would limit the amount of current. Say you plugged it into your wall at 240 volts, it was back in those days, and you could get 240 volts out the other side, but at a limited amount of current. And that's where safety packs originated from, because the 240 volts coming from your wall was associated with the earth, in that every third pole had a wire from the neutral coming down and running around the pole to earth the neutral at, I think it was every third pole or every 10th pole or something like that, and transformers were earth. Your house was earth. We called this the MEN system, multiple earth neutral system. And because the power coming out of your power points is associated with the earth due to that MEN system, then they had they had a current limiting transformer, a safety pack transformer, and that secondary winding which limited the current at 240 volts, maintained the voltage but limited the current, isolated you from the earth. From the earth system, it isolated you from the MEN system. Sorry, I'm a bit rusty on these things, and I wasn't going to talk about that today. But now I'm going to tell you the most important thing that I want to tell you about today. It's nothing to do with electrical. Well, it is, and it's not really anything mechanical. Well, it is, and I'm going to write it up on the board. And this is what I really wanted to say today, but with this education prior. And what I'm going to tell you is there is a duty cycle on this particular thing that I'm going to write up there. I'm going to write it up now. And this is the most important thing that I have to tell you today. That there is a duty cycle on the human body. Don't work yourself too hard in the day. You've got to have a break in the day, but on a much broader sense of that, I don't care what you're doing, whether it's you've got no money or whether you've got lots of money. You've got to have a break from the mundane. Let's call it the mundane, because some people really love work, and even if you absolutely totally love your work, you've got to have a break from it. So as for a number of reasons, first of all the body, but most importantly, the mind. The body and the mind together. That's why it's written that way. The body and the mind together. So even if you love your work, sometimes it's good to have a break, to look back and go, oh, hang on, I'm on the wrong path there. Even though it felt good and I was at it at 1,000,000 miles an hour because I felt like I was at that sweet spot. When you have a break, you can look back and say, well, let's say after 10 years of even having an annual holiday, which I never had, you might say after that decade, well, crikeys, I think I was on the wrong path there, you know. It's important. Hey, it was important last night, and I'm going to tell you about this subject now. It was important last night that some absolute total dick had stolen my microphones. Man, what a loser. $6 microphones and the device that goes in the tablet to make the buddy of the microphone. I think I might have paid $15. Some people, hey? Anyhow, let me tell you also, let me jump back and tell you some more things about rainbows are magnetic. And let me tell you that that rainbows are magnetic was a discovery by me. I might tell you that this in the end of the Rainbows Are Magnetic video. So I'm Mick Cox. That's your lot for today, this week. It's been a huge week, especially with all that seismic activity happening around. I call it psychic energy because it affects your psyche, and it affects us, the earth as well, our Mother Earth. The American Indians called our sun the grandfather sun. So it's a quaint terminology. It's the word quaint is something that I can use today, but it wasn't something that the American Indians looked at as quaint, and rightfully so. They gave us the greatest, most important teachings of anything, to look after our earth. There's nothing more important for ourselves, our children, their children, and lineage. So anyhow, I thought I had left my microphone in my jeans, but I hadn't. They were around the house here somewhere. So I hope you put them to good use. There was a number of them there, and that Bluetooth dongle. My God, you've done well and scored there, because it was included in a camera selfie stick, I think. Wow, the selfie stick was $15, so you've really scored well. More power to you. Well, have a great week for the rest of it, folks. My God, I think it's Wednesday. That's when you know you've had a busy week. No church lately, it's Christmas break. So I must have gauged my weeks on Sundays, by Sundays. Remember, the duty cycle of the human body. I'm just going to mention very quickly, it's an actual factual thing that, let's not get into the semantics of what Nostradamus did, but Nostradamus worked too hard. He missed his duty cycle, and he died writing at the table. That's a fact. And there have been kids playing on those on game stations, or whatever they call them, who have died from going 24 hours a day, etc. Man, I don't know how the brain didn't say, oh, I'm feeling really depressed. Somewhere around there before that particular kid I remember hearing about passed on. Really sad, really sad, really sad. Anyhow, on a lighter note, the human body, mind, spirit, your electrical body is your spirit. Now, let me just quickly mention that a lot of people, I'm not going to identify them as one religion or another. A lot of people refer to the soul as a person. Well, in my religion, and in a lot of other religions who believe in reincarnation, that the soul is sort of like the item or the part of you that is in heaven or so, somewhere in another realm, with a silver thread connected to each incarnation, and each incarnation has an electrical field that I refer to as a spirit. So, and science have now proved that when a body passes, that something that weighs around 3 ounces leaves the body, and 3 ounces is a fair bit. I've spoken to you about it before. It's the weight, 3 ounces is the weight of those plastic bags in the fruit and veggie section. Listen to me. Now, hear that voice? I'm stopping right now, and I'm going to listen to my indicator. I've gone a bit overboard with this video, as I always do. High functioning Asperger's. For me, my type of high functioning Asperger's is to work myself into the ground. Have a listen to that voice. It's just because my system is down. And I've been extremely naughty. I haven't had breakfast yet. And I'm looking at the vacuum cleaner and thinking I should vacuum the floor. No, next thing is breakfast. To state the obvious, I'm talking about that kid. So that kid at that desk playing that game, man, I almost wept. I almost cried when I heard about that kid. Not because of a waste of his time or anything. I'm not inferring that at all, because those game station things do teach your mind certain things. I'm talking about the loss of that person, not that soul. The loss of that person that was here on the earth. It's not a good thing to forecast your next incarnation. Forget about that. That doesn't fall into it. We shouldn't become so pedantic like some of the monks do in worrying about harming a worm because the worm might have been our brother. And we can't change the past. I know some of them in the future try to, but who cares? So that really is your lot for the week. Now, notice a difference in my voice that's changed. My conscious mind has noted that I was getting tired, low on energy. So it started to, subconsciously, my body started to squirt some adrenal. That's what happened. That really is your lot for the day. I got to get those teeth seen to. Blessings to you all from Mick Cox, and rainbows are magnetic. Check out the book, The Holy Grail of Science, after you listen to the video, Rainbows Are Magnetic, and I'm going to write a book on that soon. I'm getting to it. I've got a micro SD card with all of it stored on it. Have a good day, folks. Have a good week. And have a good year. And have a break. Have a break. Otherwise you'll look like me. Tired. See ya.